AM and FM radio waves and Wi-Fi and 3G and 4G and all that, that's all light. It's just light that we cannot see because it's carrying data on different bandwidths of light that are literally measurable bandwidths with the different widths, right? We can only see red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, or whatever, Roy G. bit, green, right? We can only see those colors because of the curvature of our eyes. Now, on the edge of the different color spectrums, there's infrared. We can't see that, but it's around us. And then even different other sizes, we end up carrying data on those light waves, right? And they're just like light. They're measured at 186,000 miles per second. And so our bodies absorb it just like it's light. And we have like our hormones and our endocrine system in our skin cells, and we absorb this radiation thinking that it's light, and it throws us off.
Ain't going back, not gonna buy into all that. Hey, ain't gonna hide, gonna let all the fears slide. Got mother nature, it's on my side. Got all of the loving growing inside.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lorenzo, and I am here with Matt from Spiro Protective Clothing, Franken Skies, and the coming documentary Climate Change, Franken Skies 2, and Campbell from Autodidactic. This particular chat is going to go on Campbell's channel, Autodidactic. Check out newagora.ca for more of what Campbell has shared and many more articles of what Matt has done as well. And Matt, how's it going?
Hello, welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And it's great to be able to talk about, if you haven't seen Franken Skies, the first movie that came out in 2017. And then I'm working on Franken Skies 2, the sequel, Climate Change, which I'm looking forward to coming out with in probably next year, which will be featuring us protesting these 15-minute cities, low traffic neighborhoods, and all of that. And then I even just read today that they're talking about taking farms from the people because of cow farts and all that sort of nonsense. Yeah. So that's out of control and happening on our doorstep. And so we all have to learn about this and, rise to the occasion to say no collectively, because if we say no too late, or how it goes, activism. So thank you so much.
Yeah. So Matt, since we're going to be on Autodidactic's channel, which is self-taught learning by yourself, perhaps you can give us a bit of background on how, you taught yourself the specifics of what's going on in the world, how you got to Franken Skies. You and I met years ago, at one of your first symposiums in Vancouver, and, what you learned about 5G along the way and how it led to your clothing line.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Yes, of course. So my name is Matt. I'm from the United States, from the DC, Washington area. And after having many walks of life already, I moved to California and then Vancouver. And along the way, I woke up to chemtrails. I knew about 9/11 pretty much right afterwards because of a documentary. Imagine that. It was Loose Change, which was a great documentary. And then what really got me was Zeitgeist. And Zeitgeist was a big moment for a lot of people, especially during that time, place and time. And so little did I know I ended up becoming a filmmaker. Who knew it? So in that realm too, for the cause. So I ended up going to school finally and getting a film degree. And I ended up in Vancouver, slowly waking up to chemtrails. And what happened was I met some really old timer 9/11 truther guys that lit a fire under my butt and said, make that movie, And then finally I said, well, first I've got to host a conference and get everyone together. And I got on the front page of your magazine, The New Agora, when it was in print. And we packed the house in downtown Vancouver for the first Global Chemtrail Summit. And that was a huge, amazing, I couldn't believe it even happened when it did. That was 2016. And then 2017, I did the Global Chemtrail Summit in Portland. 2018 in Tucson, Arizona, where we stopped Bill Gates and this whole rally, protest, concert on Mother's Day for Mother Earth to stop Bill Gates from doing the sun dimming experiment. And then Franken Skies came out in 2017 along the way. And then I learned about 5G. And then when I really learned about it, I became an activist in that space and created a clothing line that defends and shields people with silver clothing. And I'm actually paying the bills with that. So I'm an activist, become successful entrepreneur, which is ideally inspirational to people because people don't think that activism can do anything. They think it's like a project of passion, but it's not going to really, pay the bills. But I'm here to say, if you follow your heart, you can also make it your passion and your employment. So, don't just dilly dally. One of my first mentors, he said, you can't be half pregnant with the truth. You either honor it or you don't, right? And it's like, you can't be half pregnant in that. It's like all these different truths are there, and you can't cherry pick and be like, oh, I believe this one and not that. And I'm a truther. I'm a tinfoil hatter on the weekend. People say that, and I'm like, get out of here. You know what I mean? It's not the game that I play. And it's worked out because I've trusted in it. And now I've got like 40 items at SPERO. It's a Latin word for hope. Spiro Gear is my company. And I make these foam bags, which have been, so I'll tell this foam bag story really quick. I made these silver foam bags. And right when the lockdowns happened, everybody's blackout foam bags ceased to work. So their bags were blacking out everything, but they cranked up everyone's phones, and I had to double layer my bags. And I replaced everyone's bags with double layer silver. And then for like a year, those worked. But then when the next variant came out, the phones got turned up again. And I firsthand had to witness this, and I had to replace everyone's bag again with a triple layered foam bag. And I had to do now 2 layers of copper and a layer of silver, and now they're gangbusters. But what I experienced was, even if people had the same phones, like iPhone, like if you had the iPhone 10, it was getting turned up and then turned up, and people are getting sick as well, not knowing that this thing in their pockets cranking so much that it's penetrating these bags that otherwise blacked out everything across the earth, until March of 2020, which was, something to witness firsthand. Is amazing.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Like what have you found out about? Like we had an interview, Campbell and I, with another Matt from Cultivate Elevate, and he was talking about the problems of 5G and Wi-Fi and energetic disharmonies in the body. What have you discovered in some of the studies you've done?
Well, for one, 5G is a completely new type of radiation. It's not like, 10 times more, or let's compare it to 4G. It's not even comparable. It's a completely new form of radiation that people have never witnessed. So we're all guinea pigs, and the canaries in the coal mine that are showing symptoms are the ones that are going and failing PCR tests and saying that they came down with something that's not even really real in my world, because I think it's the phones giving people low radiation sickness, low level radiation sickness, and all the symptoms line up. And I mean, look, the deal is I got a master's in business, graduated top of my class. And one of the things that you learn in business school, which is a lot of BS really, but one thing that you do learn is the difference between corollary and causal, correlation and causal relationships. And people don't really get like correlation, like, every time I go outside, the sun does XYZ or whatever, like people can say that every time you wear a blue shirt that a red car goes by, until you wear a blue shirt and the red car doesn't go by, because it doesn't happen 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, whenever it's statistical anomalies. Once you study statistics, you can narrow things down to being actually like causal or corollary. And with this 5G radiation and the way that it was introduced and what it is and the way that it works, it's getting people sick. And I don't know how else to slice it. And people, they will question me all day long, whereas the phone even says, don't hold that thing to your head. And when you really learn about what 5G it's a mesh system. It's not like any of its predecessors. It's pushing the signal around that is your neighbors and everybody's. It's like one big mesh network. And so it's a little cell tower in your pocket, and people don't grasp that. And so they couldn't even turn them up all the way all at once, where people really would show and get sick. So they had to slowly turn them up to slowly propagate and they're still working on getting the infrastructure together. It's 5G, the real 5G carrier wave that's measured at about a millimeter. That's not out yet, because for one, all these canaries will be showing up too fast. And two, everyone has to adopt it, and there needs to be a lot of infrastructure for it to be firmly in place, and with density of it, and everyone has to, get on board. But what I've learned is people are getting sick and they're calling it something that it's not, and then they don't realize that it's their phone, and like their whole family gets a phone upgrade. Okay, here's the deal. People get radiation in their cells and then eventually there's a overload, and then they have to detox radiated cells, and that's what radiation poisoning is on a low level. And they detox that, and what it looks like is a cold of some sort.
Mm.
I'm not even gonna say that trigger word because I know I'm not doing it anymore. So what happens is everyone's like, oh, you're sick, let's get a shot or whatever. And then you're around those people and you have radiated cells in your body, because guess what? You got a freaking cell phone. You've been around all that stuff too. And your body wants to detox that. And when you're around them and they're detoxing their radiated cells, and your body's like, oh, that's how I detox my radiated cells, then you detox your radiated cells, and it looks like, again, the cold. And that's it. It's the majority of what's going on around nowadays with ailments, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on with the chemtrails, which we can talk about, and everything else, but this 5G experiment, we can call it, and it is that because it's in our lives, like full on. It is what's really getting people sick, and I don't think that this whole couple of years has been anything but that. I think that this whole couple of years has been a smokescreen for the introduction of a completely new technology, which is 5G. And I've witnessed it firsthand with my phone bag. I mean, I've got to do 2 layers of soft, thick copper and a layer of silver. Whereas 2 years ago, all I had to do was 1 layer of silver to completely kill these phone signals. And now they've got COVID tracking. Oh, I said the word, whatever. They got tracking on the phones and all this, how I can't get away with it. Sorry. So they've got all these different tracking devices and all these things. And so it's important to be able to black your device out and realize what's going on. But yeah, if you guys can seriously like hone in on what the 5G really is, because it absorbs into everything it hits. That's the one thing. It's a carrier wave that's small. And I mean, cut me off, but I'll just say this really quick. So we've got different ways of carrying data. AM radio waves, FM radio waves, and AM radio waves are really big. If you measured them, they're 100 feet tall. They can go really far. They go through things and they don't absorb into what they hit. Therefore, they don't cause cancer or anything unless you like live right next to the thing. So as this signal, or as the carrier wave size gets smaller, then you can carry more data on it, but it can't go as far. So an FM carrier wave is like 10 feet. Wi-Fi is like 30 centimeters. And then we get all the way down to like 4G, which is still not measured in millimeters. Okay. It's like, depends on the carrier and whatnot, but let's just say it's 10 or 20 centimeters, right? We're going to give it a number. So, but it varies, but that's about what it is. And even at that measurement, it's not completely decimating fetuses. Okay. Let's go there because this is important. And this is, in my opinion, the biggest elephant in the room, you guys, because people that are being born and raised in this environment where 5G is everywhere, and mind me, sorry to be insensitive, but miscarriages are through the roof now because people don't realize about what radiation is doing when they're with their phones and being pregnant. Sorry. And I have complete heart for all that. But what's happening now, if you're born and raised in a 5G environment, if you're being bombarded by a millimeter size wave, when you are a little baby fetus and you're measured in millimeters, you're being impacted, and especially your developmental organs, when they're measured in millimeters, which is a lot of the time when you're a child, then you get to be of age and those organs aren't going to work. And there's just going to be this whole agenda 2050, whatever, like dystopia, children of men. There's all sorts of movies where people can't have children. And it looks like that's the writing on the wall. And I hate to go there. That's not where I want this show to go, because I'm more about hope and stuff like that. But it seems like the game, because when you learn about the absorption of the carrier wave and what it really does is it decimates the things that are of its size, because in this instance, size really matters. And so this carrier wave, it absorbs into what it hits, because it hits things that in this space where we live, things are measured in millimeters. So the things that it hits are dense enough that it absorbs into just about everything. And that's why the repeating cell towers have to be everywhere, basically, because it absorbs into everything it hits. But in that regard, it absorbs into developing babies. And so if you're an infant and you've got your ovaries developing and you've got this carrier wave absorbing into you and hitting your eggs, they're not going to be able to work when you're older. And that's going to be this big elephant in the room. And that's how this transhumanism fear, how we're like, how the heck could they possibly pull off transhumanism? It's because people are going to be scared into it. Like, oh, no one can have a baby. You better transfer your consciousness into a cyborg. It's like, give me a break. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, right. Wow. So basically, what you're saying is every phone is like a repeater station, like and an antenna. So they're all like the 5G grid is jumping basically from phone to phone and then emitting from that phone. So we're all carrying these little 5G antennas in our pockets every day, basically.
Exactly. So say you're in a city and you've got a whole bunch of people a block away and they're on their phones and you're the only person on your block, all their signal is going to come to you and try to go further down. And it's all going through your phone, which is if that's in your pocket, you've got this little cell tower that's a repeater of all of that. It doesn't care how much is going through, and it cranks. These things get warm and people get sick and they don't see the correlation, which is not a
Mm.
correlation anymore. It's causal. This was the point that I'm
Well,
making.
yeah, that's really interesting because we're seeing it everywhere, and I'm kind of the same as you. I don't really believe that it exists. We'll call it it.
Mm,
Um, but clearly people are getting sick. They're coming down with something, and you're putting it down to the radiation basically, and it's we're all getting irradiated, and the flu is just us getting rid of those dead cells, right? That's
right.
I haven't thought of that before. That's really interesting.
So the proof is really in the pudding of which I have these foam bags, which they are blackout bags. And to reiterate, you put your phone in the bag and no signal gets through. And these were all over the world, right? And then they just stopped working, meaning the phone is ringing through, getting messages because the technology shifted overnight. And it just happened to be March 2020 when everybody's getting locked down because of their supposedly something's going on, right? That alone is like we're already looking at some statistics that's already too coincidental. And then once I fixed the problem, it was fixed until they came out and said that Omicron was out. And then they stopped working again, and I had to make another round. And that was what blew my mind because I had invested in all these new ones thinking they were gangbusters because I doubled up the material, 2 layers of what was working before. And then I had to introduce copper. And I mean, like firsthand experience, I would say without any doubt that people are being, I mean, there's so much happening that they're showing symptoms of the radiation from their phones, 99% of what's going on. And so there's that. And then we've got also chemtrails. And one thing that people don't grasp, and so we've got these blokes with freaking headphones, the wireless headphones. People, let me just tell you, throw them in the trash and I'll tell you why. For one, they interact with one another and they communicate through your brain. So you've got radiation going from A to B through your head, and that's not safe. But here's the kicker. You've got metals from fluoride in your water or the chemtrails and stuff like that. Well, you have a blood-brain barrier that protects your brain, but EMF fields, they break down that blood-brain barrier and make it porous and let that metal in, and then you get Alzheimer's, dementia, and all sorts of stuff like that. So you don't want to put an EMF field over your head constantly. Look in the manual of your cell phone, it'll say don't hold it up to your head. So why would you put those things in your head? It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. And you're just a guinea pig for them if you're doing it. So I advise everyone to
So
get with the
wireless
program.
headphones, that they'd be just pumping it straight into your head, wouldn't they? Everyone's using wireless headphones.
Yeah, exactly. And they should not be. And that's slippery slope to, I mean, if
And
it's,
that's kind of a good rule of thumb, isn't it? As far as all this radiation is plug in, like plug everything in.
yes, exactly. I ended up getting all wired. I have even these headphones are, old foam and stuff, and I've got an Ethernet cord. And even though I've got Facebook following 70,000, I've got a big Instagram, and I've got you name it. I've got everything, and I've got an internet business that's thriving. And I do these things, and I don't have a cell phone either, because my 3G phone got turned off in January, and I didn't get the new 4G LTE. LTE basically stands for 5G. It stands for long-term evolution, but it means they're slowly forming that and cranking it up into 5G and just giving it a name. And then they also give these other names like 6G and 10G and all these other things, but that's just giving 5G different names. Like you can't really get much stronger than a 1 millimeter size carrier wave. That thing's going really strong a few hundred feet, and you've got to have every few hundred feet another repeater. And if they can get that in, they can have self-driving cars and everything else. they call it high band, low band, mid band. That is based on the carrier size of the signal. But yeah, the 5G is in game, and so people need to realize that. But no, you can live your life without, and it sounds crazy to a lot, I know, but I do it. You can live your life without wireless radiation. It's doable. Trust me. And you can get the GPS if you have to. And or how about this? I recommend people get an EMF meter and then see what you're surrounded by, and then go from there, because you've got to take consideration of your surroundings and your environment. And I've met people that have, like, a Wi-Fi router in their bedroom, and they don't realize what it's putting off. But then when you grasp it and see it on the meter, because it's invisible, no one wants to take my word for it, because it's same with the chemtrails. It's like, I don't see anything at ground level. It's like, watch the movie.
Yes, and we'll put the links to all that below as well into your social media. But I mean, this small millimeter wave, that's a microwave, right? And I think everyone knows what a microwave oven is and what it does. It cooks things, right? So is that what's happening? Like we're going to get cooked basically from this wave?
Well, essentially, that's a great question. And the millimeter size carrier wave, it was first created in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, to prevent insurgents. It was called the Active Denial System, ADS. And it looks like a little cell tower. I don't mean to laugh. It looks like a cell tower on top of a tank. And they deploy these things, and they are 1 millimeter waves. And just like you said, they microwave people, and they tune them to the exact, whatever it is, probably like just under a millimeter or whatever. There's an exact size where it absorbs, and it absorbs into people, just like the 5G and stuff. But this one is designed to absorb right into your nerves and hurt. And so it's like a frequency fence. It's an invisible frequency fence. And people, I don't really like to go super fear-based with stuff, but there is a fear that in a lockdown situation, in an Agenda 2030, 2050 situation, if your social credit score is up or whatever, they could just turn on your little frequency fence, and you couldn't even go outside of your house if they tuned the 5G to be a certain, whatever. So it is potentially a prison, but I think that we can buck that before it even gets there. But the active denial system, yes, it was a millimeter wave technology that would hurt and burn the skin. And then that's where the 5G technology came from. And they just tweaked it so that it does absorb into the body, but it doesn't hit the skin. Otherwise, how could they sell you the phone, right? It goes right just below those nerves and does absorb into us just the same, though. It's pretty much a weapon. Hate to say it.
Yeah, and that's cooking. When it absorbs, we get heat. So yeah.
No, I noticed when I did shows and I would get a call and someone would pass their cell phone on to me, since I don't have one, my ear would get hot, no doubt. Right away, even like, talking to, I go, okay. I'd have to get it away real fast, because I would start to feel the temperature rising, near the side of my head where I was using cell phones. And this was before even 5G. This was 2 or 3 years ago was the last time I did a show and took a phone call, so to speak. So it's interesting to.
I can hear you, but it's pretty quiet.
To hear the
science
behind it. Yep.
Yes, there are thermal imagery. You can actually see thermal imaging. To reiterate what Lorenzo said, there's thermal mapping imagery that shows the heat build up over a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And what's staggering on those heat imagery thermal mappings is they show a child's head versus an adult's. And because a child's head is so much more water when it's not as developed, and the blood-brain barrier in the skull is not fully developed, at younger ages, they absorb so much more radiation. So it's even that much more important to not just hand them the iPad or put the phone or anything, let them touch that thing, because they, absorb it in their brains even more.
Wow. Don't we see that a lot? Kids with iPads and stuff in the backseat of the car at the restaurant. They just give them a scrying mirror to look at.
I see lots of parents walking around here. They've got their baby, on their front, because they're carrying their babies in their baby cradles, while they're on their phone, right by their babies' heads. And I see it all the time, every day. And it's crazy. Are some of your products meant to alleviate this, Matt, for babies and things like that?
Yeah, it is. Your volume is just a little low. So I have maternity aprons and also baby like onesies. And the goal is to protect the children. That was the number one goal. So that's why I even came out with the foam pouches, because you don't always have to have that phone radiating everyone. And that's why I recommend get the meter. If you have an EMF meter, you're now taking it into your own hands and you can see this invisible stuff that's around you. And then you might say, like, oh, I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode at night and not have it in my bed, because that's like a really big intro kind of level thing to not sleep with it in your bedroom. And if you do, turn it on airplane mode. Yes, the alarm will still work, but it's important to not have all of that going on because it disrupts your sleep. It basically confuses your body and makes you think that it's the middle of the day, right? And then your body can't sleep very well and produce the right chemicals, and it throws you off and eventually makes you depressed. And that's why teen depression and all that is through the roof, because there's this thing called a circadian rhythm, circadian clock, and it gets thrown off by both blue light from devices and the radiation from the phones. The radiation from the phones, it's invisible to us, but our bodies absorb it like it's light, because it is light. It's just light that we cannot see. So earlier I talked about AM and FM radio waves and Wi-Fi and 3G and 4G and all that. That's all light. It's just light that we cannot see because it's carrying data on different bandwidths of light that are literally measurable bandwidths with the different widths, right? We can only see red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet, or whatever, Roy G. Biv, green, right? We can only see those colors because of the curvature of our eyes. Now, on the edge of the different color spectrums, there's infrared. We can't see that, but it's around us. And then even different other sizes, we end up carrying data on those light waves, right? And they're just like light. They're measured at 186,000 miles per second. And so our bodies absorb it just like it's light. And we have like our hormones and our endocrine system in our skin cells, and we absorb this radiation thinking that it's light, and it throws us off. So you don't want to sleep with it. I have to explain it though, because people are like, what? Why not? You don't want to sleep with it because it throws off your skin is absorbing this radiation. Maybe it'll give you a tumor, but slowly it'll make you depressed. It'll mess with your sleep. Maybe you feel like you slept good, but your body didn't produce certain chemicals that slowly you'll become depressed or something. It's like you don't see it until over time with just the sleeping with it thing. But that's the first step to owning your health and, detoxing from this stuff. And I know everyone loves their phone. They're probably watching this show on their phone, and that's cool. But also it's important to learn a balance. I'm researching and learning Rudolf Steiner, and he says to find a 50-50 from 1913. He says to us, find a balance with technology, at least 50-50. Try to find half of your waking life not with tech. And that's important because we're natural beings. Let's be real.
Yeah, I agree. Like, so you mentioned the phone pockets, and are they mainly to be used at nighttime, or I mean, I guess you've just said 50%. So I guess because this is the thing with social media, people are just on their devices. It's just too much, right? Like clearly. So I guess it's a good habit to put it in the packet at nighttime and maybe only take it out during the day at certain times and start cutting down your social media. But for someone like myself and yourself and Lorenzo, we work, we need computers and things to work. We stare at screens and that. What's the best thing that we can do to sort of protect ourselves apart from plugging everything in? What else have you got as far as your shop? And links below, guys, if you want to check out the products as well.
Well, for one, grounding is important, and I have grounding mats, and people don't really, that's another invisible thing. You don't realize all the electricity that's going through your body, and it has nowhere to go. And I'll get so charged up with dirty electricity, and I'll touch the grounding mat and I can feel it leaving me, and I get centered. You have to watch a video and see the voltmeter and all the electricity that's going through me, and then it's not when I press the thing. It's hard for people to grasp the grounding thing, but it is important. Okay. Also, there's EMF protection, just like a beanie and stuff like that. Like people I know that
Yeah,
are on the stuff a lot, they get headaches. And then you throw on this silver beanie, and you're basically your head's in the in the dark from all that radiation, and then your headaches are alleviated. Stuff like that it can be really important. I like to wear the shorts to protect my or the men's underwear, but I like the shorts especially, to keep that safe, especially when I'm out and about we're in a soup of it all. Like we're in a soup of it all, especially in the coffee shop in the city and all that sort of thing. So at least, or a tank top. Personally, I like to cover my heart because my heart's pretty sensitive. That's how I got into this whole thing. It's not like I was that valiant and was just like an activist in this realm. Like I wanted to fight the chemtrails and I made Franken skies, and please watch the movie Franken skies. But for this topic, I became electrosensitive from a smart meter in Vancouver. It's like smart meters are bad. You all, if you live in a home I don't know if it's like this worldwide, but in North America, at least, these smart meters, if you're in a home and you're really close to it, distance is your friend. That's one thing to learn. So to answer your question is education is key, right? So it's education, which equals knowledge, but knowledge plus action equals power. So first we need the knowledge, and the knowledge is like, oh, I don't need that Wi-Fi router in my bedroom, or oh, I can put my phone on airplane mode at night. Like you don't need to buy the phone pouch. You can just educate yourself and put the phone on airplane mode at night. And that's a world of difference. Some people forget. Some people like to put the phone in the phone pouch and then they pull it out, only certain times of the day, and they ding, 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 they get all their text messages and they find that balance. Because personally, I don't even have a smartphone, because if I did, it'd be full on, because I'm already, all over I post way too much on the internet. It's a lot of time and energy. I'm doing Facebook lives and videos and this and that, but we can all find balance. Balance is the key. And it's like getting into nature. And I know that sounds very simple, but balance is very key. And also the education, I mean, knowledge is so freaking important. You can put your Wi-Fi router on a timer and just have it go off late at night. And that can be immensely impactful. And just education, like I said, so knowing that you can turn the Wi-Fi off on your devices. Okay. So if your Wi-Fi router is whatever in the other room or the other house, and then you've got your things connecting to it, and you might not even know your Xbox, like that's why it's important to get an EMF meter, because I've gone to people's houses and they've got a freaking smart dishwasher or alarm clock, like especially alarm clock, these little alarm clocks next to the bed, and it tells the weather. I'm like, how do you think it's telling the weather? And they go, I don't know. Like, because it's wirelessly connecting to something, and then they realize that this thing next to their bed is blasting them with radiation the whole time, and that's why they can't sleep. They get rid of that, and then all of a sudden they're sleeping better. It's not rocket science. It's not that complex, and it doesn't have to be some crazy, it doesn't have to be that extreme. You don't have to abandon your phone. That's the one thing they want us. Everything's a trigger word. They want us. It's not this division thing, but either way, they want us looking like nutters, so that they can be like, well, I'm not getting rid of my phone. I'm not, this and that, getting put in this box with everyone else. Right. But we're normal people, and you just need to find balance, to find health in your life. Otherwise, this radiation in your life will catch up to you, and people, believe me, you don't realize it, but you might already be showing symptoms. Oh, also, mineralization is very key. And being around EMF radiation, it deplenishes minerals, especially zinc. And a lot of zinc deplenishing will show up like as cold symptoms. And people don't know how to get these certain minerals in their bodies. And it's important to learn how. And so it's got to be bioavailable. So I take sea moss. It's like a seaweed. And then I get it with bladderwrack and burdock. And then it's 104 bioavailable minerals. They're just ground up in a pill, like on the internet, on Amazon or wherever you get your health stuff, but it's plant-based. And so then you get these minerals, and then you're not deficient in minerals, and then you're kind of immune to it more, because you show symptoms when you're deplenished in your minerals. So understanding this and just getting knowledgeable in it, you get a one-up on everyone else. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, education is definitely the way forward.
So just like that, we've got chemtrails. And then if you are mineralized from like your diet, and you honor that, then you're not absorbing the chemtrails too, right? So we know from the research, and if you watch the movie frankenskies.com, that, which is it's a great film. I don't know if you've seen it, Campbell, but it starts off in the 1920s and it goes through a historical chronological timeline of how we got to weather engineering and how the tools got sharpened for the weather to even be engineered, and how they came up with geoengineering, which is now a supposed solution, even though chemtrails is some crazy crackpot thing that doesn't exist. This identical thing, geoengineering, is supposedly going to save us from climate change is the new narrative. You know, it was global warming, it was greenhouse gases with the greenhouse effect, but now they flipped it and they're blaming every weather event on climate change. And they all of this is so okay. So if we can get into this, there's this green agenda and it's global, right? And it's worldwide. And what it's basically the enslavement of humanity, because they want us being not just carbon taxed, which is already bad, but like carbon enslaved, basically, because they want a social credit system monitoring, I mean, how long our showers are. And if we're going 15 minutes away from our home, all based on carbon, they're going to spray the sun with geoengineering. They're already doing it and they're slowly saying that they have to do it. So it's happening. We're not going to, it's not happening, and it's not going to not happen publicly. It's going to happen publicly. It's happening publicly. Let's be real. Like in the movie Franken Skies, once it gets to 2015, the CIA's announcing it. So it's happening publicly. And so we have to grasp where we're at and eventually step up and say no, or we're going to end up in a smart city where it's because where I live, there's already no-go zones. I live on the West Coast of the United States, in Oregon, on the border of Northern California and Oregon, and they're creating these areas where, because of the fires, you know, which the fires are geoengineered, and where they could make rain over these fires, they make wind over these fires. You know, they engineer lightning to make fires. Then they say, oh, I don't know, and then they tell us we can't live there anymore. That's what's happening. So the green is really this like watermelon green, where it's green on the outside but red, communist socialist red on the inside. And it's to push us around, it seems, into this, you know, smart city kind of environment where we can be controlled, where then they, whatever agenda they pull off, we all have to have, you know, a QR code or whatever it is, social credit score, and maintain, you know, certain social norms to keep everyone happy. But it's all basically the enslavement of humanity, because it's going to come in line with digital dollar, which is a big, you know, it's all going to come at once, it seems, which is over the next few years. We'll think, it seems to me like maybe we'll get a year or two, who knows what it's going to look like, but there's a lot of shoes that are about to drop all at once. And it's a lot of our rights being lost under the guise of carbon emissions. I mean, you have to be carbon neutral. Like if you have a cow, you're going to get a big bill because the cow is releasing methane, and that's not even a problem. Like they're chemtrailing and making heat waves with HARP and NextRad stations. They're zapping, they're microwaving the atmosphere. We can talk about that. They're creating crazy heat waves and storms and scratching their heads, pretending like that's not happening, and then saying it's our fault, our carbon emissions, which we exhale every time we breathe, you know? And then they say that it's because of us that this is happening and we need to be regulated. It's all a big, I mean, it's been planned for a long time.
It's crazy because, I mean, it's carbon dioxide, and I mean, that's what, less than 1% of the atmosphere, I think. But the thing is with carbon dioxide is when it gets higher, things just grow bigger, don't they? Like that's why things were bigger in the past, because there was more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So it's not actually, it's actually more of a benefit to have a bit more of it. It's not like it's going to kill us or anything, but of course we're the cause of all these problems, aren't we? We're here to destroy the world and all this.
Yeah, not very many people know that the number one greenhouse gas is water vapor, and then there's methane release from for instance, landfills. Landfills off gas lots of methane, and methane's not the problem. You know, the elephant in the room is geoengineering, which is, again, they call it the solution. And so that's why the next film is called Climate Change, because they're making climate change into this like shackles enslavement. We're telling us that we need to have smart everything, which those smart meters are going to be they're already pretty wicked, but they're going to be really monitoring us in the future, monitoring our energy usage to keep us in this social credit, I mean, we have to stand up to it basically. So I'll be going to London, and I'll be traveling around North America, going to these protesting these LTNs. They're called LTNs, low traffic neighborhoods, where they're putting up roadblocks and saying you can't go within 15 minutes of your home because it's bad for the environment. And like I said earlier, they're already saying that, and this already happened in the Netherlands, where they're taking farms away and then replacing them with freaking cricket farms, right? So because these are green and the other ones are not green, essentially. I mean, where I live, I can't even believe what's happening. The president has come into to the state level and is having dams removed under this green initiative, which it totally disrupts agriculture and does all these things. Like the humans are going to be disrupted, but they say it's rewilding. They're rewilding, but what they're doing is they're making, it's all Agenda 2030, where they're making these big stretches of land that they're claiming are not livable anymore. Well, they're making them not livable, forest fires or whatever it may be. And then they're playing that game like we can't live there anymore. It's people's land that they own. That's pretty predatory and evil if you think about it.
Very.
For sure. I mean, I remember people I used to know growing, when they were growing certain herbs at the time when it was illegal, and they would, pump CO2 into the rooms just to make them grow faster and better. They would actually invest in CO2 canisters. So, obviously, as you said, everything seems to be upside down and backwards. I mean, tell us a little more, Matt, about your climate change movie coming and how, you're delving deeper into all of this and some of the solutions maybe that could allow people to pay more attention to what's going on.
Well, there's a lot that people don't grasp, and that was only covered. There's only so much that was covered in the first film that came out in 2017. And one thing that people don't realize is the contrail story is a con. There's no contrail. It's all just different chemicals being mixed. I'm getting deeper in and probably going to expose. I'd like to interview an engineer, but the jet fuel is a hoax. Okay, so the jet fuel, this story goes back to 9/11. And we all, even you and I, even though we know the truth, we were traumatized by jet fuel. And did jet fuel take down those buildings? No, it didn't. But we all still think that planes are full of jet fuel in our subconscious. I mean, most of us didn't know that it was BS right when it happened, right? I mean, it took me a while to realize it was total bollocks. And then when I did, I still didn't realize that jet fuel was nonsense until very recently. So these planes, they have a little bit of jet fuel, yes, but there's not this engine combusting, blasting hot air. The jet engines in the 1950s, they were on the back of the planes, and they were combusting and pushing the planes. And that's like a jet engine you see like on an aircraft carrier, like a military jet. They push the planes. But these engines, these 2-ton titanium and steel, which slammed into the Pentagon, mind you, and disappeared into thin air. These 2-ton titanium Rolls-Royce engines, they're just turbines. They're called high bypass turbofan engines. And once they get spinning, they're just propellers, basically, creating lift over the wings. There's no heat coming out, right? My dad was a pilot even, and we'd fly through flocks of planes, and there's no heat being blasted out the back. And usually you'll see the planes flying over and there's nothing, right? They try to dismantle it and tell you that it's the barometric pressure and all this sort of confusion tactics. Truth be told, the engines are not hot. The contrail is a total con to confuse it. Oh, is that a contrail? Is that a chemtrail? They're both chemical trails. Okay. And the short ones are barium, and they're used to prime the sky. There's barium release NASA patent rockets, barium release rockets, go back to 1978 through NASA. NASA has a budget of $66 million per day. They have a very large chemtrail program. Most likely, if you see chemtrails in the sky today, it's a NASA program, no matter where you live on Earth. And they have a public program called CARE, C-A-R-E. It's called the Charged Aerosol Release Experiment. And kept in the dark. We think that engines are hot, that there's all this jet fuel sloshing around in the wing, and that it's a farce, really. Like if there was jet fuel filled in those wings to the amount that they said, it doesn't even fit with the amount that there's supposedly. And then when, like, imagine when a plane lands, all that sloshing and what would happen with all that fluid. It's not full of jet fuel. The wings have gotten hit in like airports, and they're not leaking jet fuel when they get cranked off or whatever. They're empty because they have to be lightweight, and there is a little jet fuel to take off and land, but to keep that turbine spinning, it's just compressed. There's an air compressor in there running off of a battery. And so that's something people need to know, because they think that there's all this hot jet fuel being burned, and then that there's heat coming off of those engines so hot that they're making trails that last all week. You know what I'm saying? Right. And that's a big, they're like, well, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a weatherman. It's like, no, you've got to get past the being told how to think instead of thinking for yourself. So that's part of it. And that's very important. Also, I'm interviewing people of every walk of life. How did they first learn about it? How did you first learn about chemtrails? How did you first wake up to this? Because it's important for people to realize that they're not alone in this journey of coming to waking up to something that you can so easily get ridiculed and criticized by. Because this is one of the big ones that people can shame you for thinking is true. Oh, they think chemtrails is true. You can even see it in the cartoons and stuff like that. Oh, they think chemtrails is true. And it's a dirty word. But what's not a dirty word is geoengineering, which is exactly chemtrails, and it's the supposed solution. So that's an issue. I'm interviewing firemen as well. And so, okay, so there's an agenda at play. And it's not just the West Coast of the United States. It's Australia, it's Canada, it's all over the world, really. And what are the chemtrail constituents? Well, we've had to do rainwater analysis and hair analysis and look at the patents. The patents tell the story. And we can conclude across the board that the primary constituents are barium, strontium, and aluminum. Barium oxide and aluminum salts are the primaries. And what they do is they prime the sky first with the short trails, and then they come along after they've sprayed those short ones, the barium rockets, and then they come along and spray the longer ones, and then they can linger and persist because they mix with the other chemicals. So they're doing a big elaborate chemical mixing in the sky. Sometimes the chemical mixing, it takes a day or a few hours or even a couple of days. So people need to grasp that. But what the chemicals are, the aluminum and the barium, these are patented fire accelerants. These are made in bombs to make fires go, right? So this is being sprayed on our trees, day and night on our forests. The trees uptake them, and they have aluminum and barium in the tree. It makes them really flammable, makes them unable to uptake water properly, and it makes our forests like complete crazy tinderboxes. So that's a long-term crazy agenda to make these forests like crazy fires so that they can get on the front page and be like, what are we going to do about this? We need to engineer your weather. And that'll come up, I bet. And not just geoengineering, dimming the sun, but actually weather engineering. And they'll claim that they can, alleviate drought and whatever, but they'll have been doing it the whole time. And also they'll be pushing us off that land. More so, that's the agenda. They'll never really fully come out. Like they in Dubai, they're like, oh, we can see the clouds of lasers and this and that. But it's all like a normalization, maybe disclosure and whatnot. What they're really doing is Agenda 2030, pushing people off of land. So that has to be known and shown. And some of the firefighters, God bless them, they know the truth and they still fight the fires. They have to. You got to do the honorable thing. So that's happening. And then we've got storms, which are just getting worse and worse. I mean, Fort Lauderdale, Florida just got 24 inches of rain in one day. And then these hurricanes hitting, I mean, there's a lot. Fort Myers got wiped off. And then also in Australia, these hurricanes, and they're very obviously engineered. The people are realizing it. And if you look at the Doppler radar and whatnot, the frequencies being used, everyone's privy to it. And people just look at the sky and they're using the HARP frequencies as they make the storms hover over and flood regions and whatnot. So people are in the know. It's just about putting the puzzle pieces together and showing it in the documentary, right? And then also ideally rallying people together in conferences as we go so that they can have that in-person interaction, because that's really valuable.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in northern New South Wales at the moment, and I think it was 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we had massive fires right down this corridor down where I am. And then a year ago, the whole place flooded out. Like
See.
it's, yeah, so and I mean, people, they're pretty awake up here now, obviously, because of what's going on. But, you see these pictures of the weather, the clouds in the skies, and they've got right angles on them. And you'll see this cloud system, and it'll just hit a wall almost and just be this straight line. And it's like, don't think that's natural. So, I mean, I think a big part of this is what community, right? Getting together with like sort of minded people and building communities and getting, I guess, a resilience going. So you've got people to lean on. Because this is the thing: if you're out there on your own or feel like you're on your own, it's very hard to stand up against the bigger issues. It's easy to
Mm-hmm.
turn your phone off from that. But as far as geoengineering, it's a bigger issue. So what are your solutions, yeah, on geoengineering and things like that?
Well, yeah, it's a big thing to tackle. And it's not one of those things where you can just take them to court because they're not even admitting they're doing it. First you have to honor yourself with like taking the minerals and learning how to detox, know how to get rid of what they're doing so that you're empowered, right? And mineralizing. And then nobody likes to hear this, but it's awareness, raising awareness. Okay, we know what GMO foods are, right? We can go to the store and they're labeled. And if they're not GMO, they're labeled organic or whatever it is. Activists had to get loud and do something. And then they got those labels. Activists died. It's true. They died fighting those GMO labels and like making them be known that that existed and what that was. And it's very diabolical. I mean, these GMO foods are designed to withstand Roundup, glyphosate, which is toxic, and then your food has a toxic thing on it. I mean, it's very simple if you think about it. And then they try to make it very complex, genetically modified organism, and then people think, oh no, it's just so that it's drought resistant. No, it's so that it can be poisoned, and you are eating that. Let's be real. You know, people
Mm.
had to fight, and it was a slow battle, but they got there and they won. And no one wants to hear that it takes one pebble at a time to move a mountain. It takes one voice at a time. I mean, I've had conferences which are beautiful, and I'm making this next movie, and I've had and this other movie, and I've gone to 5G city halls, a lot of them, and spoken about 5G and awareness about that, and that's at a local level too. Because how are you going to stop the stop sign? How are you going to get a stop sign put in your neighborhood? Well, there's an accident there every week. You go to city hall and you say, there's an accident there every week. My dog got ran over. We need a stop sign. I've got a petition. We need a stop sign. You get vocal, you do something. People over the past couple of years, especially with lockdowns and stuff, they think passively. They don't think that they can do anything. Yes, you can do something. You're the boots on the ground in your community. Think about it. You are the something that can do something in your community. The people, you can do the petition, you can raise the awareness. So just like that stop sign, if there's a cell tower going up in your neighborhood, it's going up in your neighborhood. You can't wait for some rule to pass like globally or something for you, or statewide or whatever it is in the province or whatever. You go to your neighbors, you on a grounded level, you meet them where they're at. You don't go with some tinfoil hat craziness. You say, hey, there's this research in France, you know, they said that the closer you are to the cell tower, the more likely you have all these ailments. There's a whole study out of France, right? There's a lot of research and studies. And
Mm.
then you bring it to your city hall and you say, I don't want this within a certain distance of my home or my preschool. And you've got a petition or whatever. And then they say, okay, well, there's a lot of flack. We'll put it over here. And then maybe, I know it's sad that it's put somewhere else, but it's not outside your bedroom window. Okay. And that's what you did. You became a little activist or big activist. You did something. And that's what we need for everything, including geoengineering. So people don't want to talk about it. That's a big problem. You start spreading the word, raise the awareness, and then it gets to the level where the pilots are informed that it's bad, and then they start speaking up. Like, no one's going to come forward if they're thinking, it's like you have to reach 100th monkey of awareness before anything can get done about it. The majority of people are still in the dark on this issue. The majority of the people still think that that's a crazy conspiracy idea. Okay. And the problem is that everyone, including myself, is programmed and brainwashed, because I've seen Batman, Superman movies and stuff. And I think that things happen overnight and that a hero can do it all and that I don't need to get involved and someone's going to do it for me with tanks and bombers and stuff or whatever. Yeah. But we have to get involved. We have to be those people that raise that have those conversations, that raise the awareness. And a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people are afraid to do it. That's the big problem. A lot of people are so afraid they're still wearing masks. Okay. So we've got all these levels of fear. But the people that are not in fear, they have to have the conversations. I live in a town where I know a lot of people know about it and they're afraid to even talk about it. They've contacted me. We go out to lunch and they say, I'm afraid to talk to my friends about it. I'm like, why? Then I'll be called the chemtrail person. I'm like, it's the truth though. You shouldn't be afraid of the truth. Like, fear and truth aren't even on the same vibration. You're just mixing them together like a bad cocktail. Like, you need to honor it and not be half pregnant. And then we can actually have some change. But it starts with one person at a time. And you're not going to be the superhero. And you're not going to be the person that's applauding the superhero either, because the superhero doesn't exist. So we need everybody to play their part and to have the conversation with their grandparents and their cousin. And if you want to just share the movie Franken, and I hate to be that guy because I made it, but it's still a great movie, then you have a grounded way of just saying, hey, or watch this. And then we can look at the sky differently. You know what I like to do? Instead of being all fear-based and being like, look at the lines in the sky. Oh my gosh, they're spraying chemicals. Since they do it so much now, I like to bring the awareness to the beautiful days. Look at this blue sky with white fluffy clouds, no planes in the sky. Bring it to the awareness of my friends that are new to it. And I bring it on that level. And then when it is spraying, I'm like, whoa, look how different it is today. I say it nicely, I'm not trying to shame them. And so we know how to approach our people and how to meet them, and it's really that it's awareness and it's health. And you can detox your body in so many, ways. You can chelate by removing the heavy metals from your body through certain chelation mechanisms and diets and stuff. I like to do sauna. I think saunas are immensely important. There's these bodies exhibits that go around the world and you get to see these bodies all sliced up. It's weird, but the skin is a full-on organ. It's like very thick. And if you get the skin working for you, you can detox really well. So I think saunas are super important. And then of course to stay hydrated with good water. But if you can, and maybe even structured water by like eating like, cucumbers and celery and stuff like that, like fruit and whatnot, it's really important. And like I said, bioavailable minerals, I get it from the sea moss, which is just a seaweed, but it's got all these minerals packed full of minerals, because minerals are very important. But yeah, a lot of people want to hear like, oh, we're going to take them to court or something, or, put a shungite pyramid in your backyard or something like that, and that's all like has nice intention behind it. But at the end of the day, your voice is your weapon, and hiding it is not what we're here to do. Like, we're not given vocal cords just to hide our truth, So we have to get not loud, but we have to play our part, and I know that everyone knows someone that they can get through to. And that's the game we're playing right now, because, like I said, there was a time where GMO wasn't even a thing, but people got vocal and got loud because they're passionate about it. So it's time to get passionate about this. I got passionate about it, and other people can too. And I believe in that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's a multi-pronged attack, isn't it? So they're basically, all this stuff attacks our health. So we need to look after our health. We need to stop the radiation coming in as much as we can by wiring and other products that you've been producing, and communities and information. I mean, is that pretty much what we're looking at here? Is, I mean, and of course, all of this has to come under. We have to take responsibility for it, right? We have to take responsibility for ourselves. We can't be pointing the finger, waiting for a savior, like you said, which we've seen a lot in the last 3 years. It's like, just wait, and the savior will appear, and that's great, right? And unless he doesn't appear, then you're kind of stuffed. So is that what sort of you would say is it's just what we need to sort of focus on is stopping the bad stuff coming in, like the EM radiation, getting the information, like educating ourselves, and then just making sure that we're putting the right fuel into our bodies so that we're not getting depleted.
Well, also community. Like, if you want to be real, we have to see the writing on the wall, which is digital currency, which is social credit, something or other. And these are a reality where I will not exist. And I'm not going to operate on that level, which means how am I going to buy groceries? How am I going to function? So we have to be big thinkers. And it doesn't mean just taking care of your body and passing out flyers, which is also beautiful. We need to realize that we have to honor freedom in whatever way we can possibly. So if you can open a grocery store or have some sort of underground something or other, whatever it may be, start with film screenings. Gather your tribe. If you can grow organic, or I mean, everybody can do something. It's a task, but we need communities is what we need. We need communities to be able to make this way of life, which is just honoring the truth and not being enslaved and honoring sovereignty. We need sovereignty to reign and prevail, and it has to come from community, because the divide and conquer is the game, right? They want the neighbor looking at you and being like, oh, it's othering. It's like, oh, they're this age and this size and this color and this sex, and I'm not that, and therefore I'm gonna rat them out because they took a 5-minute shower. If you knew your neighbor and everyone was on the same page, and you realize that we all bleed red and we're all human together, then you start to see that it's really a spiritual thing, and there's good and evil, and what side are we on? We're all good, right? And then there's no like divide and conquer anymore. Their game is over.
Yeah.
Right? And it comes from community. We need that. I'm starting, brother, and you'll hear about this because this is going to be a big, awesome task. I'm starting a currency where I live. I live in a pretty cool farm community where it can be done, but I'm starting our own currency. And if you're a member, you're sovereign, and you start with money just from existing. It's kind of like communism a little bit, but not. And I don't really know how communism exists, but this is like pretty utopian because everyone on board starts with like something. And I'm going to have it in place because I know what's going to happen. I know that there's going to be some shoe that drops, and they're going to say, come cash in your physical dollars, just like East Germany. When the wall fell, East Germany, right? They had to come cash in their money to get the West Germany currency, or they were SOL, or they couldn't get any money, and they had this crazy exchange rate, and then that was it, right? You guys remember that or whatever? I mean, I'm not that old, but I do know a little bit of history, and so that's what's going to happen with our digitization. They're going to say, come bring in your cash. And so we're going to be forced with like either accepting their system or creating a new.
Yeah.
And I'm on that level already that we need to create a new, like, awareness, education, yes, like learn how to grow food that's adaptable to because they're messing with the climate. Okay. Like they're zip zapping the weather. It'll be up and down and crazy cold and crazy hot. They've been doing it all over the world this year. And what it does is it confuses a lot of the plants. It seems like this big bullseye on agriculture right now. They just want to control it and dismantle it. And then in a few years, they'll be like, what do you mean there's a shortage? It's like, come on, guys. So it's important to learn about resilience in farming and what plants are not going to go to seed and bolt and get all crazy because of these extremities in your region. Learn how to farm and adapt with the times. And that means being a conspiracy theorist, knowing, okay, they look, these Maui farmers in Hawaii, their papayas and cilantro were dying because of the chemtrails. They were like, okay, we're just going to put these tarps over and do these little makeshift greenhouses. They stopped dying from the chemtrails. You have to adopt the truth. Okay. Another conspiracy theorist is a trigger word. You forget that word. You have to be honoring the truth. And that means if they're going to make it flood, build some rafts. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't just sit there and be like, I can't believe my potatoes aren't growing. It's like, dude, you knew it was going to make a flood. They did it every year for the past, 5 years, whatever. It's like, see the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think big, but even if you can think small and be like, well, I'm gonna, create a CSA where I grow the carrots, my neighbor grows the potatoes, and then someone else grows the onions, and all of a sudden we got three families exchanging things, and none of us have to buy potatoes, onions, or carrots ever again. That's something. And then if the system does fall apart, you all could double up, and then maybe someone's growing corn as well, and then you're freaking sustainable. Like, that's what we need. We need resilience in community through basically agriculture, but also just community awareness, which is like the opposite of divide and conquer, in my opinion. And that's my answer.
Nice.
Yeah. Very nice and well put. And I would heavily agree. If you're not doing something, don't expect someone to come save you. Everyone really needs to get off their behinds and figure out how to make their community happy, healthy, and strong. And you've given us some great suggestions today, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers to that.
It's all about building this alternative, they're saying economy, but an alternative system we can use, right, for living. So, because I just want to mention that a lot of people are selling these food packs and stuff, like make sure you got 3 months of food there. But I mean, that's really saying that after that, what, do you go back and rely on the system again?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a cop out, really, isn't it? It's like that should be go and plant a garden, but unfortunately you can't sell go and plant a garden, can you? But so that's one thing is if we need to do this as far as we need to be looking long term. Like when we do things, it needs to be this is the new way that we do it, rather than this is just to get me through 3 months and then the government will be nice again to us and they'll forget all their evil plans, because that's kind of what a lot of people think is going to happen. And if it's not that, they just want to yell at them and say, well, they should stop and I should just not have to do anything. But, reality is reality, isn't it?
That's the truth. We have to do the work. Even just learning what is available wild in your area, like what grows where, when, and what can grow wild. Like potatoes almost grow on their own, but people think that they have to go get the shiny ones from the store that are, polished and what have you. But what if that store's not open? You can't resort to violence. That's what they want, But I think that if the lights do go out, that humanity will show that we actually have resilience in hearts and can actually step up to the plate, because there's so much abundance out there. Things are so abundant. It's unbelievable. I didn't even grasp it. I grew up in the city. When the first time I saw an apple tree full of apples, I'd always thought that they had like 3 apples on them, how I drew them when I was a kid. Right. I never knew how abundant everything was. They want us to think that there's a scarcity and that there's overpopulation. It's not true at all. That's a story. Yeah. It's a marketing scheme, it's all tactics, it's advertising.
I'll go into the wilds here and I'll see loquat trees and, they're just covered and they're free and they're growing everywhere and by themselves and in the mountains. Or you grow shiso, I guess it's perilla, right? It comes back every year more than you planted. You plant one plant and the next year you have 100 growing by themselves, everywhere. Almost they become an inundation of food. So I hear you, Matt. It's a matter of, getting off your ass, realizing the abundance is there. And I like your perspective. Through the challenges, we will rise and we will show our true colors, which is, love and heroism and all the other lovely things that I know people are capable of if they decide to, act on it for themselves.
Indeed.
All right.
Definitely. Yeah, well, thanks heaps for your time. It was great to meet you there, Matt. And as you've mentioned, Franken Skies, link will be below, guys. We'll put your social media there as well. And we'll also put a link to your store where people can go and get this EMF protection for their phones, the clothing, the beanies and things you were talking about. Stuff for babies, which is obviously very important, you know, for little kids and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, all the links will be below, guys. And yeah, that was a really interesting talk. I definitely learned something. So maybe we can have another talk in the future sometime.
Yes, that'd be great. And I appreciate it. And also, I have a website, actualactivists, plural.com. And on there, there's all sorts of resources, information on health, and there's a daily blog, and anyone can learn something on that page. So please take a look. Thanks a lot.
That's awesome. Send us the links and we'll whack that down below as well.
Yeah, we'll leave everything below. Matt, thank you so much. Delighted to have you back again down the road. And Campbell, it's been great. I appreciate this. We'll get it up on Campbell's channel, Autodidactic, and then perhaps a few weeks later, we'll throw it up on mine. And you'll come to newagora.ca. You'll see Matt's hub and Actual Activists. All the links will be there. And we'll leave all the lovely links below to everyone's amazing creations. And, you know, if you want to do something, you'll see plenty of opportunities for that.
Indeed. If it is to be, it's up to me. All right. Got to walk the walk, walk the talk. All right. Cheers, Matt. Great to talk to you, mate.
Cheers. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Great. Have a great day. See ya.
You too. See you.
Make me lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Freedom